Christian Lowe, your Queen Connector with the Brewer Media Group. And today we're having a conversation with LaTrice Currie. We're talking about her book, My Journey, Finding God's Purpose and Power. So thank you for coming today. I want to say I love you and I appreciate you.
Donna.
I do. And I really appreciate you telling the story. A lot of people go through tragedy and they don't really want to tell the story because just all personal reasons. But first of all, before we get there, for anyone who's living under a rock, I want to make sure they know who you are. But tell us a little bit about your background. We know you are LaTrice Currie, and we know that you are the lady that we see every day on the news. But go ahead and give us your background for everyone listening.
I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, a woman of faith, and an advocate here in this community.
Yes.
And my thing is to always, hopefully, through my work, whether it's professionally and personally, volunteer organizations, that I'm leaving things a little bit better than I found them. So that's one of the main things that I've always felt is important. And I think with this is just really, it is about unpacking a lot. But Donna, it's also not just, I tell people about my journey, and that's the title of the book, but it's also about how we can all embrace our own journey. And there are some places in there that you'll see for journaling and for all of us to think about where we are in our lives. What's our purpose? What should we be doing? And how do we deal with adversity and different things that are thrown our way?
Well, you know, I want to kind of debunk the idea that when we're behind the radio and TV that we don't have tragedy or, you know, challenges. We look good on camera. We sound good.
We hope so.
We hope so. That's what that is
for. Bad days, some days, but hey.
But you're looking good today. But you know, that is part of the role. You know, we are there to communicate with our listeners and watchers. But we're going to kind of go into something that you went through. I'm going to tell you what happened for me. I was watching TV one day when I heard the news. Now, we had heard something had happened with LaTrice. We did not know. But for those out there, what I want to do is kind of get a little real and raw with what we're talking about. So literally one day, all of a sudden, LaTrice had something happen. What was that something?
LaTrice had a pulmonary embolism.
Pulmonary embolism.
Which is a blood clot.
Blood clot.
That lodged between the lungs and the heart. So everything started to shut down.
And, you know, again, when we look at TV, we don't think LaTrice has any challenges in life, right? But that's not true. So as the days progressed, you were in the email communications at TV3. They were looping you in, right? But they took you out after a while, right?
Yes.
But before we get to that one email that you read and you realized, wow, that, you know, you realized, hey, it could have been the opposite. You could have died, right? But go back to what happened. What were those days like once it happened, and what were the signs that occurred that all of a sudden you say, oh, now I know?
And that's the thing I've talked with still to this day. My surgeons and the doctors talk about, you know, LaTrice, this should not have happened to you.
Because you're healthy.
Because I was healthy. And so, you know, I thought. And it was like I exercised every day. I try to eat healthy. And one of the things, though, Donna, I will tell you this, and I tell people, and they know this is another passion of mine when it comes to health, is that my surgeons and the doctors say, if, LaTrice, we truly believe if you had not been as healthy as you were, there's no way that you would have made it through this, because what that did to your body and the beating that you took.
That's key. That's key.
To be able to fight through that. Yes, so I think that that's one of the things that I will always continue to advocate for. We know that along with the course of being a miracle, but it is so important. Give yourself a fighting chance if something happens.
The physical state of how you lived your life, what you were doing, your exercise, and your mental health all played into your outcome, correct?
Right, correct.
Now, as we go through that, though, how many days were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for, I was in the ICU for 6 weeks, and then another almost 3 weeks, and a little over 6 weeks in ICU, and then almost 3 weeks in rehab at Cisco.
And the doctors, they told your family that you really might not make it?
That was the first thing when my two of my best friends were up at the hospital that day, and the doctors came out and said, "Where's LaTrice's family?" And they said, "Well, they're in Nashville," and they said, "You need to get her family here now." And my friends were like, "Well, what's going on with her?" And they said, "It doesn't look good. We'll just be honest. She's the sickest person in the ICU right now." So when you think ICU, and when I walk back through an ICU now,
Well, I know
Donna,
family that I've had in ICU.
Yes.
And it is truly, I mean, you think that's the end.
Right.
Most of the time.
yes.
So your family comes in.
My family comes in. They call my pastor up, and it's one of those things. I write about it in my book. People would always kind of make that running joke about. They were like, if you call the pastor, the rabbi,
It's
the
done.
priest,
You're done.
yeah. And so they call my pastor, and my first lady who's a friend of mine up as well, and they were all up there, and some more members from my church, and so that's kind of what they were preparing for.
Well, you and I are close in age. We've talked about this, and we have to start paying attention to our body. We have to start paying attention to other people's bodies. You have to be aware what people are like when they're at work, when there's things that happen that are different, and take note of that. So let's progress. So I'm going to tell you, when I watched TV and saw David Carroll share the message, first of all, I think I'm always about how did the message come across, and I just want to say, David Carroll was such an amazing person. I can't imagine being the person trying to convey that message, but he did it. And then I'm going to say Chattanooga is amazing. I would not want to live anywhere else.
Oh my goodness! You know what? You think about.
I get chills thinking about it right now.
I do, and I think about. There's a reason I'm still here, because over the years you'll get leads or opportunities, or say, "Hey,
people
are
try
you
to recruit you?
Are you interested in this job? Are you interested in And it's just and then you think about. There's a reason why it didn't work out, or there's a reason why you said, "No, something's not right about that."
Well, I'm going to go to your reason, and I love it because you are not shy about your reason and your foundation in God. And I love that about you. It is all through the book too, and finding God's purpose and power is really what helped you. But I'm believing this book is going to help many people out there. When you look at some of the chapters and you look at you can tell that you put a lot of thought, but there's a lot of feeling behind this. So, but talk about your belief in God. A lot of people don't want to share that, but that's part of who you are.
Well, that's a part of who I am. I was raised in a church where, a lot of my family was in that church. My grandfather was my first pastor. He's
I did
passed
not know
now.
that.
Yeah, he's deceased now. Passed when I was a young girl. But and so I just grew up, and my dad and my uncle have always been active, and my mom, and so in the church, and it was just a part of who I am.
Yes.
And at the time, though, it was just something that seemed routine. And as I got older, it started to more take shape and form in the foundation of who I am and the person that I've grown
really
into.
part of this, though.
Yes.
And I don't know, I tell people you have to believe in something, whatever your something is. It's good for you, but it's true that you have found some power in this tragedy. So let's kind of move forward. So you get out of the hospital, and I remember the first time that you spoke to us from your house.
Yes.
It was during COVID.
It was, right. And I think, the very first time, if you're asking when I spoke after my illness, I remember, I think it was at the end of the year, was during the holidays, because it was almost like a miracle. I got to go home before the holidays, and I remember that was my goal.
Yeah.
I said, I want to be home.
I remember you saying that.
I want to be home for the holidays.
And you could tell, what I loved about it was you could tell there was a difference in your speech. You weren't back 100% yet. But what I liked about that is it let the community see the raw of what you were going through. And I believe anything that you go through, you have to, well, at least for me, you have to try to use it to help others. And I think about, what if my sister goes through this? What if my mom, my aunt, what if someone goes through this? And so this is definitely a testimony. So you get home before Christmas, which is your goal. That was your goal. Your family, your friends who were thinking you were going to die are now blessed with your presence again. But what was the journey like? Because you went through some serious rehab.
Oh, I went through some serious rehab. I think even in the ICU, like I was saying, the first 3 weeks, I was out of it. They were like, I was able to, obey verbal commands. A lot of times, like if they would come in and say, LaTrice, squeeze my hand.
That was interesting to me because the story that we were getting was very real. Now that I want everybody to hear, the media was telling everything the truth, the right exact way. But to hear that you were actually there and they were asking you questions and you could squeeze their hand, that you were actually hearing those things, that's something I'm always interested in. And then fast forward, do you remember those moments?
I don't really remember those moments. I mean, I remember the discomfort of, and they said that's when you started to wake up, and of all the tubes and just, I mean, you could imagine. I mean, there were so many things in me at that time, which I had to have to stay alive.
Had to stay alive.
And and that's the other thing, like I tell people, like simple things, like it was probably 4 weeks before, 4.5 weeks before I even had a sip of water.
Wow.
Because they were like, they had to be so careful.
And let me kind of give a side note. So a lot of people don't know this, and they wouldn't know it till this interview maybe, but you're actually one of the cases they're still studying there.
Right.
Because it was so odd.
It was so odd what happened. And I mean, all of the things and the number of more than a dozen.
The case at Erlanger, I should clarify.
Right, at Erlanger. And I just have to say to the entire staff there, I can't say enough about how wonderful they are. Not only did they do their job as professionals, but just the compassion they showed as well.
So fast forward, you're in rehab for how many weeks?
I'm in rehab for about 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And almost 3 weeks. And
that's speech?
And that was speech. And that's the other thing. I remember we were talking about David Carroll. He said, LaTrice, that was one of the things, because that was one of David Carroll along with Callie, who was then my news director, now my GM, and Cindy were some of the few from the station who, because I couldn't have a lot of visitors who came to see me. And I remember David saying, LaTrice, that was one of the things. He goes, your voice, it was so squeaky. And he said, I remember thinking, is her voice ever going to come back?
Yeah.
And it was just, because you could barely hear me.
Yeah.
And and that was one of the things I was worried about. I remember going to speech therapy, and I was like, is my voice ever going to come back? I was like,
well, you sound better than ever. But let's talk about something that we have in common. We have a son.
Yes, we do.
So I've got to know, because we try to prepare, we try to do everything to have things in line for our children. But I don't know that
I was not prepared. No, I never did.
Talk about that. You weren't prepared, and so what was his reaction, and how did he go through this journey with you?
Wow. Well, it was, that was one of the things.
And thank you for being honest.
Right. I mean, I think that, and I tell people now, I was just talking to my aunt, who was one of the ones who was up at the hospital with me, and I was saying, I said, now we think about, we have to prepare for life. We don't want to think about something could happen to us at this age, but you do.
Yes.
And you have to make sure you're prepared. Yes. So I had just dropped my son off at college.
I remember this. I remember the pictures. Yeah, the excitement.
And so I had gotten back to work, I believe it was that Wednesday. And wow, and this happened that Sunday. So you can imagine the first thing when my family gets here, and then everyone remembers, they're like, my friends kind of fill me in on what happened. They were like, we think about, oh my gosh, someone needs to call AJ, my son, Alfie. And they were like, so one of the deacons from my church, who I actually also went to Hampton with in college, he goes, he and some of AJ's friends drove up to ETSU that evening and to pick him up. Yeah. And my dad called him and said, hey, someone's coming to pick you up. They just said your mom's sick. You need to come home and see your mom. And I remember my friend, who's, like I said, my pastor's wife, said the one thing that she kept praying was that, oh my gosh, because they had told them, we don't know if she's going to make it. And they're like, please let her hang on long enough so her son can say goodbye to her. That was where it was right then.
Oh, but again, I say the lesson in this to the listeners and the watchers is that be honest, and you want to be prepared as much as possible. Yes. And it gives me the lesson as a mom that, sometimes you do have to have the hard conversations. Yeah. You have to prepare, because what if what happens if you didn't
We can walk out of here right now, Donna.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to take that lesson as a mom to be more direct and more honest, because I just want to equip him with as much information and tools as he can, so it's not as hard, because it is going to happen. If life takes course like it should, then it will happen. Right. But now let's fast forward to you get an idea to write a book. book. You know, a lot of people write books and I applaud them. I have not gotten that bug, or nobody's talked to me in my ear and said, hey, you need to write a book. But what made you think about writing it? Have you ever wrote another book?
Well, you know what? I've written poetry, and you know how I've always loved to write.
Yeah.
So like I've written poetry, written short stories, and done things before.
But never a book.
But never a book. So, you know, I mean, this was one of those things where I was just like, yeah. And I remember David Carroll actually jokes about it because he said, remember I told you should write a book. And
Well, this was the hard way to get to that
you know,
book.
and so, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I just felt like, wow, I feel like there's so much to unpack. And at first it took me a while to bring it all together.
Yeah.
And so.
How long did it take?
Well, I actually started, say, like a year ago.
Okay.
And then about the last 6 months before it came out was when I really got serious and started like putting it together.
Yes.
Because I thought about it afterwards when it first happened, started writing down some notes as thoughts came, but I couldn't bring it together. And then I was like, no, but then I realized, I said, what do I want people to take away from this?
Yes.
And not just this, you know, death-defying, miraculous story, but also how can it impact their lives? How can it help them? And I always tell people one of the things, you want words to come alive on the page. And that's what I really hope to just kind of draw people in so that they can reflect on where they are as well. And that's why I also made it where there's, after each chapter, a place for you to journal.
Yeah. Well, we've been friends for too many years to count.
Yes, we have.
I don't know how many times I've been on the show.
Yes.
But what I want you to know I've taken away is being a little more real and raw with who I am. That's my takeaway. I don't share it often, but I'm going to share it right now. Robin Roberts' book, Everybody Has Something.
Yes.
Well, this is your something.
Right.
But mine is epilepsy. You know, people say, oh my gosh, you have a busy lifestyle. But I also have epilepsy and I don't drive. Imagine that. Put that factor and component. But everybody has something. It's what you do with that something. And it's how you use that something to impact others. And I don't ever believe my journey's just about me.
Right.
You
It's
don't
about,
either.
no, and I don't. And when you saying that, Donna, I mean, you don't know who you're helping right now by saying, look, I have epilepsy. And like you said, I don't drive. But, you know, it's one of those things where, I mean, when people see you, and I mean, you are this, you know, person who's full of personality, seriously, and vivacious, and you don't let that slow you down or stop you, you know?
And I do know this, that my something is so mild compared to someone else's something. So, you know, and I say it again, I think real and raw and in your face sometimes is the best way to be. And I'm glad that David Carroll told you to write that book.
It was so funny. He goes, you should write a book.
Yes.
And it was like, and you know, it's one of those things where, like I said, I had been thinking about it. And I was like, you know, I'm going to do that.
Well, we were busy and we couldn't come to the book signing, but I know you're going to have more, correct?
Yes, I am going to have more.
So talk about that. Let's kind of segue, because I know people are going to blow up my social media. How can I get her book? Don't be jealous, but I have a signed copy. Thank you. So it is My Journey, Finding God's Purpose and Power, LaTrice Currie. And I'm just going to say, you are rocking that cover.
Oh, thank you.
You look gorgeous. You look gorgeous. Makeup is on point, but I don't expect anything else. But talk about, let's kind of segue into where you will be, because I saw all the people showing up, and you know what I love? Everyone loves you. Everyone from all walks of life.
I am so glad. You know what? And let me say this. I'm not going to kid myself and say that, oh my gosh, I think that everyone's my friend. But you know what? I want to say this. I think that when you know who you are, and you know whose you are, I think that shows, and I hope that is what shows and comes across from me. Like you said, that I'm real, I'm authentic. What you see is what you get. And when I say that I love this community, because there were so many people from so many different walks of life, from so many small towns that I, you know, weren't even that familiar with, that I'm still catching up on things from.
Well, I'm going to say this. You know, I don't think it would probably be naive for you or I to say everyone loves us. But I'm going to say this: 99.9% of the people I know, I know they do. But I think it is because you're authentically who you are. You're authentic to yourself. But there's something about a confidence that when we show confidence in who we are in our belief systems, it kind of just you wear confidence like you wear this cute suit or this cute outfit, and I think that just shows, and people respect that. So I want to say how much I love you. I appreciate you. and I'm proud of you. I'm so proud. I love to see women doing life big, and I'm proud of what you're doing here. Thank you for my signed copy. Let's talk about where you're going to be in the next couple of weeks, or what can you share as far as book signings, and then how can they find your book?
Okay, so first of all, this weekend I will be in Nashville. I'm going because I'm from Nashville, for those of you who didn't know. So I'm going back home for a book signing at a bookstore there in Nashville. Then I'm working with some people here in Chattanooga for some more book signings as well, and I will post those as well. So there will be more back here in Chattanooga after this one in Nashville. And like I said, Appreciate, of course, had the one this past week at Barnes & Noble. So, and that's been just a thrill because I just love getting out and meeting and talking to people as well. And you can always get it. You can go to my website.
What's your website?
LaTriceCurrie.com.
Wonderful.
Or you can get it on Amazon.
Of course you can.
Yes,
of course you
either
can.
one. So yes.
Well, I'm going to be the first one to form a book club for my journey. So we're going to form a book club, and we'll talk about the details. Women and women with children, right?
Okay.
So we're going to do that. Men, you can still do it, but you can form your own book club. I'm kind of biased to the ladies out there, but we'll talk about that. So we'll form a book club over coffee. Everybody knows I love my coffee. So we'll do that, and we'll kind of make that happen as well.
I love that.
And then
Let's
we can
do
all
that.
journal our thoughts in the end, so we'll make that happen, okay?
Let's do that.
Right. So I love you.
Love you too, Donna.
Thank you. I'm so glad you are still here.
And that's another thing. You know what? Like we say this, and it is so important, like friendships and women like this. And Donna, just to say, I love you.
Yes, I love you.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
You know, seriously.
Yes,
it's
I believe in that. I believe in those verbal affirmations. And life is too short.
Yes, it is.
So make sure you're giving people flowers while you can.
Yes.
There's nothing, I say this, there's nothing worse than getting that call with your friend, your family member, and the first thought is you're sad, and the second is immediately, I wish I would have.
Yes.
I don't want those feelings.
No.
So let me say it again. I love you, LaTrice Currie. And you're
at
looking
ya.
gorgeous today.
So are you.
All right. Well, you know LaTrice Currie on TV3. She's been around in our community for too many years to count. She is a friend of mine. She's a wonderful friend of the Brewer Media Group. Make sure you check out my journey, Finding God's Purpose and Power. You've already heard where to find it. For now, I am Donna Christian Lowe, your Queen Connector, and we are out.